Good morning, church. Let's start our day with a reading from Matthew 28. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's Matthew 11:28. You know, when we hear that passage, which is a great comfort to many of us, we think of the yoke, and we think, of course, of oxen that are being used to haul carts and so forth. We think of two oxen being yoked together, sharing the yoke. And it's true that in those days, a stronger ox would be paired up with a weaker ox in order to help carry that load and shoulder that burden. So that's one way to look at this passage, but there's another way too. There's an intentional double meaning here. In those days, when you were an apprentice or a disciple of a particular teacher, it was said you had their yoke on you. So you would take the yoke of a particular teacher or scholar that you wanted to learn from, and the students would be referred as those who had the yoke of that particular person. And so Jesus is not only talking about himself, Jesus is talking about himself as a teacher, as a rabbi in this particular passage, and what it's like to study under him. My yoke is easy. Come take my class, he's basically saying. Take my class. Sign up for my class, because my yoke is easy. My burden is light. Take my yoke upon you. Now, of course, this is one of the great paradoxes of Scripture, because we know what's involved in taking on Jesus' yoke, right? We know what's on the final exam. We know that being a disciple is not an easy path. And yet the difference, I think, with this particular teacher is that he's not going to ask anything of his students that he's not willing to do himself. Whatever he does alongside his students. And whatever he asks them to do, he will be right there with them. So he's not just telling them what to do. He's teaching them what to do as they share the yoke. How do I get my first grader to do PE? Well, I do the mountain climbers too. How do I get him to write vocab sentences with his vocab words? Well, I do it with him. I write my sentences, he writes his. How do I get my third grader to write a thank you letter? Well, we do it together. I don't do it for them, but I do it with them. I sit right here in this spot, and we take the yoke of learning on together. Doesn't make it easy, but it makes it easier to have somebody to share the yoke. So, I pray that as you take on your day, you are in touch with the fact that Jesus is right there yoked in with you. And whatever he's asking you to learn, to carry away from this day, know that he's right there in it with you too. Your teacher. Have a wonderful day.